is numb, the current's clean. Your dog is dead, it's a Ponzi screen. Ponzi screen, Ponzi screen, because it's just something to do.
Oh, it's so nice and puffy and white outside for David.
Mhm.
Oh, he
Twinkle,
loves
twinkle, little
he
snowman.
loves he loves it. He loves
Twinkle.
it.
I really do. I'm such a little baby for snow. It's such a. I just, how can you not look out at him? Like, the trees are getting like white and twinkly and heavy, and when you walk outside in the snow, it's also really muted because the snow
It
acts
is
like
very muted.
it acts like eggshell cartons on the wall, and there's not as much reverberation.
I do like that. I will give you that. That I do like the muted. It is like walking into a partially soundproofed room.
Yeah, it's just nice. Like, there's just so many.
It's just nice. Why can't we have nice things?
And it's like, I don't know. I don't like to think too much about this sort of stuff, but like, it's just kind of like, oh, we need to cherish snow while we still can. Like, I don't know. I lived in Minnesota for 4 years, and there was one winter where it just did not snow. Like, it snowed like once, and it was like in March, and everyone freaked the fuck out because it didn't snow in Minnesota an entire winter. And it was right in like 2011, right when like the cap and trade bill had just died, and I was just like, at that time, like, I was a big, like, I was really into like environmental organizing, and it was just one of the most depressing winters ever because it was like, we're fucked, dude. Like, we're totally fucked.
Bro, we're bro, you know what we are? We're fucking fucked.
Yeah. And so, yeah. And so now when I get to see snow, I'm like, oh, there's a little bit of maybe we're not. I don't know. I just it's like the
All I
opposite.
see is
Yeah.
all I see is infrastructural nightmares every time I see snow. And in fact,
Fair, honestly. Yeah.
I've witnessed them actually. I've witnessed two of them in like the past 3 days. I saw a dump truck with a flat. No, not a dump truck. I saw a garbage truck with a flat,
Oh,
like
shit.
actively driving on the hub, like
shit.
on one of its hubcaps or whatever, So granted, it's got like 16 wheels, but like one of them is out, and it's just like, and he's like, ugh, that's not good for the road.
That's like the fire truck being on fire in the Dark Knight,
Yeah. Well, then I saw,
the
and then the
apocalypse.
next day I saw a fucking bus being towed.
Oh.
So I saw like a fucking like beefed up like fucking swole tow truck, just like a fatty swole tow truck
Whoa.
towing a bus.
Was it an extra long bus or was it a normal bus?
I think it was a normal bus, but it was still big. It was still huge. It was a gigantic tow truck to tow this damn bus, for sure.
Wow, that's fucking cool, man.
Yeah, and then every time snow hits the ground, for whatever reason, like, every pothole and imperfection in the road, it looks like it's gotten worse. Like, it seems worse. And, like, I can't scientifically say, yes, stuff got worse after it snowed, but it always feels like that.
Well, I think the ice. I mean, the ice melt stuff. The salt really ruins the road. It just is a really intense chemical, and it just gets right
Yeah.
into the cracks and foundation and stuff. I think it does make it worse. I mean, I know it kills a lot of plants, and not good for the doggies if you're walking those out there, folks. Anyway, for all the dog lovers out there.
Is that why they all wear the little boots?
Yeah, man.
Because is it sharp?
No, it's like a mild toxin. So if they lick
Oh,
it,
wow.
so if they lick it, it's not good. They get little baby sick, and so you gotta. And also, it's an irritant as well. But the big concern is the licking and stuff. But
Okay, interesting.
and and for me, the curious ones out there.
And I'm just on the ground, just sort of like, oh, all right, put a little of this on my soup.
Is this
Yes.
cocaine? Should I snort it?
You guys, there's cocaine on the ground. What are you doing?
You're just gonna leave cocaine on the ground? This is ridiculous. This is so wasteful.
Yeah, and you're like, oh man, this is good stuff.
Who needs bath salts when you got street salts?
Ooh. Yeah, it's a cool one out there. I don't believe I will be delivering tonight. I would feel a little under the weather anyway. So
Yeah. Well,
whatever.
folks, by the time you're listening to this episode, there will be a winner of the big game brought to you by MasterCard. Have you watched any football this season?
No, I guess I don't really see. I mean, like, I am a sports person a little bit. Like, I enjoy watching it when it's on. I'm not out there overly resentful, like inside a fucking Blick art, store, just
Yeah.
just sort of like fucking sports.
Yeah.
Like I find basketball interesting. I find football fun in the moment. It is a blood sport, certainly.
Yeah.
And
I'm
but
with you on that one, though. I like sports when they're there, and that's about it. I don't
I
give sports any thought outside of like in the specific moment when I'm watching them with people, which is infrequently.
I like well, two things. I come from a really sports light town, so we're very cursed in terms of
Oh yeah.
medium-sized operations, but like I think the Green Bay Packers are cool because they're publicly owned. That's fun. Also, that was another funny contention of them for all the sports heads out there, all the ball dudes, all the ball guys out there. There was the Deflate Gate happened a couple years ago where Tom Brady and the Patriots were sort of accused of
Oh yeah.
illegally deflating the football, so beyond some sort of regulation, and they they probably cheated. Long story short. But then the funniest part is that everybody was like, they started comparing everybody else's, football preferences, and most quarterbacks were sort of like, yeah, I like the ball. I guess I do like the ball a little bit squishy. I like it a little bit deflated, but not beyond regulation. Except for the Green Bay Packers, because Aaron Rodgers was just like, no, I like a full ball. I like a real full ball. he likes an overinflated ball, and I was just like, hell yeah, man.
Yeah, he's very ethical in his balls.
He likes a big fill that sucker full of air.
Yeah.
So that was fun. And then I come from very cursed franchises like the Seattle
Trailblazer? No, you're a Seattle sports.
Well,
person.
both, because the Seattle SuperSonics, they got destroyed in 2007.
Right.
That was like
OKC.
that was Kevin Durant's like rookie year, or whatever, I think. So
damn.
and remember, Kevin Durant was on the SuperSonics, and then they
moved to Oklahoma City.
Okay, yeah, him and
that was a great year for OKC. Like the first 2 years were fucking fire for that team.
Yeah, it was Durant, not Russell Wilson, that's the football player. Russell Westbrook and James Harden. They were all on the same OKC team.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the Supersonics were destroyed, which is very silly in hindsight because Seattle has become a huge city of tech shit. So all those fucking losers who were like, we're gonna move it to Oklahoma. Like you moved it to a city of a couple 100,000 with no expansion. I've been to Oklahoma City. It's like the weirdest looking city. You
Tough
can't
town,
walk
man.
anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one big building and that's it. And meanwhile, Seattle has absolutely exploded in population and popularity and everything like that. And it's actually shown because the Seahawks, they won a Super Bowl a couple years ago, and with Russell Wilson, and then and fucking Beast Mode, fucking what's his name? I forget, but
Mohandas Gandhi.
No, Beast Mode. You guys
Yeah.
know, you'll know him.
Beast Mode. Yeah. Winston Churchill.
Yeah. Oh, I have to look it up just so I know. But yeah, and then also we became a really big soccer town,
Oh
which
yeah.
is always
Yeah.
that's always a
Portland
bit
too,
cursed.
right?
Yeah, the Portland Timbers and the Seattle Sounders. The
Not to make
Sounders.
this about me, but Kansas City had a pretty good soccer team for a while there too.
Not as good as Portland. Marshawn Lynch. That's beast mode. He's just he's wearing the what? He's wearing the best hat in this picture. It's an awesome hat that's straight black and then in sort of old English white font it just says thankful.
Cool.
Which is awesome. No, okay. Yeah, so yes, so like the Pacific Northwest has like actually a really good soccer franchise. And, between the Sounders and the Timbers have actually won the championship several times. They're like that. They're like the best in the country, but like nobody cares about soccer outside of that area.
That area. Yeah, exactly.
And then the Trailblazers. I mean, that's a very cursed situation. Oh, that's very fun, David. David has found a scrunchie and has put it. He looks like Mr. Monopoly now. Gets over his eye.
Putting it up to my
Yeah.
eyeball. This is what happens when people start talking about sports for a little bit too long. I'm just like, I can't participate anymore.
You guys don't need. You have college sports. The Midwest has a lot of college teams, but you don't
KU
have
basketball's what's up, dude? I mean, that's.
You don't have a basketball. You don't have a basketball team. The closest basketball team the closest basketball
The closest
team
NBA team to Kansas City. I mean, it depends. Probably the Minnesota Timberwolves or the Denver Nuggets. But
Nuggets and Wolves. The maybe OKC. OKC's not too
actually,
far.
it's probably OKC. I don't remember which one's closer, Oklahoma City or the Twin Cities.
Or
Cities
actually,
6 hours.
the Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis Grizzlies are probably pretty close.
It's probably about 7-hour drive. It's actually probably Memphis to Kansas City, and then Kansas City to Denver is maybe a similar distance.
Or the Bulls. The Bulls. That's another one.
That's also about 6.5, 7 hours. I've done these drives, man.
Yeah.
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 What you do?
Yeah. They. You guys don't. But like, you're lucky though, because you have like a nice little smorgasbord that you can pick and choose from. But like the Trailblazers, they're a very cursed franchise. They won a season back in 1977, and so they were championships once. And then since then, they've encountered some very cursed situations. They no, David, don't put that. They very famously drafted like Michael Bowie over Michael Jordan or whatever.
Oh, that's a bad idea.
They could have chosen Michael Jordan in the 1984, 85 drafts, something like that. And then now it's over his nose, you guys. And then when Michael Jordan was on like the Bulls and like wrecking shop in the early 90s and the late 90s, the Trailblazers were really great, but unfortunately,
lacking in Michael Jordan.
Lacking in Michael Jordan, they were one of the teams that didn't get a championship. In addition to like the Utah Jazz, the Supersonics, I think the Pistons were in there. The Pistons did win a couple. They were like the team that were like, we'll beat you up, we'll fucking kill you.
Oh yeah, they were the cool team. Wasn't Dennis Rodman on the Pistons at one point?
He was on the Pistons.
Yeah.
And Detroit
They used
Pistons
to whoop ass, right? They were like the cool.
They would beat you up.
That's fucking awesome, man. That's so.
They played street ball. They were hilarious.
I respect that. Yeah.
And then in the early 2000s, the Trailblazers went by the Jail Blazers because like a couple of them smoked marijuana.
Oh.
And like
yeah.
that was a big deal back then.
Yeah. The Portland mass incarcerationist victims, Blazers.
Yeah, but that was also a really funny period because that was also a period where fucking they were like Detroit in the early 90s, where one of their players, what's his name?
Danny,
tech.
I'm starting to get a feeling that you do care about sports and like
I
sports
just
and follow
I
sports.
just Rasheed Wallace. Rasheed Wallace was on the Blazers, and
Like we
he
started off this conversation, and I was like, yeah, I guess we don't really care about sports, and it's just been, you just know this stuff.
No, I just have a memory for it. Rasheed Wallace has the most hilarious record because he was on the Trailblazers and he was a really good basketball player, but he has a really awesome statistic where he got the most technical fouls in one season, which is 42. Like, so he
Nice,
was
dude.
constantly just like throwing bows and just sort of like being ridiculous. And he was one of those guys who smoked a lot of weed, and he eventually went on to get a championship in Detroit, oddly enough, a couple of
Mhm.
years after he was traded. And a lot of players would be like, yeah, there are some players who just play better when they're really, really high. And they were always talking about Rasheed Wallace.
Did you ever see
So,
that? Did you ever see that viral video of the there's the 1966 baseball player who threw a no hitter while he was tripping on acid?
yeah, those in Pittsburgh. Yeah,
Something
Pittsburgh.
like
That
that.
was,
Yeah, I've seen that video have like 2 or 3 rounds of virality, and it's just kind of like every like 3, just like once every like 6 months, someone will retweet the like Bolivian or the Peruvian architecture, and everyone's like, I love this Peruvian architecture, and everyone's like, this is so amazing. I hate Western architecture, and it's like this comes up every 6 months, or like the shrimp fried this rice thing, but it's kind of maybe once every 5 years with this one really funny video of this pitcher who hit a no hitter while he was on LSD.
yeah, he was on. I believe he was on the Pirates, and the Pirates are funny because they have funny little outfits. Like their hats are different. Their hats are different from everyone else in the MLB. Pirates best outfits, best costumes. Worst costume has to be the Diamondbacks, Arizona Diamondbacks, because they're all gray and gross.
The
Looks
D
weird.
backs, the D
The
backs,
D-backs,
yeah,
who famously had Randy Johnson when he
yeah.
finally won a World Series,
Mm-hmm.
ironically enough, against New York Yankees in 2001, right after 9/11. So,
Way to go, Randy.
very sad for the Yankees, but also that was a year that
9/11 happened.
The Seattle Mariners had the best season in modern baseball history. They had like a 7.760 record. They won which is ridiculous.
But they
That's
lost in
insane.
the playoffs.
They lost in the playoffs. The Seattle Mariners are the only baseball team who have never gone to the World Series.
Really?
Everybody else, yep, everybody
Even
else
with Ken
has.
Griffey Jr., you guys didn't do it in the 90s?
I'm telling you, man, Pacific Northwest sports are really cursed.
Yeah.
they're really cursed.
I will say Kansas City growing up was a cursed town for sports, and now all of a sudden we're like like buff with good sports. Like the Royals were like good for like 4 years.
They won a World Series a couple.
Yeah, we went to the World. We had back-to-back World Series appearances, and we won one of them.
Yeah.
And then now the Chiefs are like could be poised to become a dynasty by the time this episode comes out. They might be like everyone's like like everyone's talking about Patrick. Like I read this ridiculous article in Slate about how like this guy was like Patrick Mahomes is like Tom Brady's technical expertise plus the showmanship of who's the Indianapolis Colts guy plus like the Brett Favre plus this guy all combined and had sex and made a baby, and that's how good Patrick Mahomes is. And I'm like, okay, he's like 24. Well, cool. He seems like a nice guy.
I tried to Google. I just Googled Patrick Mahomes fun because I've heard he's fun, and I want to know. I want to know how.
Everyone in Kansas City loves him. All like the housewives have a crush on him. And seems like he has like a really nice girlfriend, and he's in like every single sports commercial now. It's crazy. I've just never really had a sports like had Kansas City be like a successful sports city, or really I just grew up when Kansas City was just like not a very like booming town, and now it's doing great. So good for
Oh
them.
yeah, he was a baseball player. That's why he's uh like kind of a unique player. There's something else that I heard is that now instead of just getting people who are like straight football skill set, they want people who can be goofy with the ball. Like they're able to throw it in more dynamic ways than just a regular football player would. So him being a baseball player is like very preferable to him. He's got some goofy curls. His wife is he's got a very white woman looking wife.
Yeah, super
Like
white woman wife.
just like like everything about her just
Yeah.
she's like the flip of the coin of the can I see your manager lady. Like she seems like a nice person.
Oh, she is like such a Kansas City. Like this is like I know like 30 girls who look just like her, and just like the nicest people many times. You know, like don't ask them about things that are like too that you're gonna disagree with them in their worldview in a lot of ways, I'm sure, or they like don't really have an opinion, but like perfectly reasonably nice people, you know.
very very nice people.
Anyways,
Okay.
Ponzi Scream. Welcome to Ponzi Scream, guys.
Yeah, we've been talking about sports for a straight 21 minutes. Actually, this is let's do this. Let me get a glass of water real fast.
Okay. Because we've been
one
talking
second.
sports so much. We have a classic one for you guys. A classic
Speaking
literal
of them.
literal Ponzi scheme today.
Yes,
this is
I'm
a
gonna
good
put
one.
in I'll put in the air horns right here.
Yeah.
and oh man, we got a namesake coming in.
So
Very
this
happy
is
to see it.
a $1.7 billion Ponzi scheme, guys.
All right.
GPB Capital. Just the good stuff.
Good player boys
The
capital.
good player boys capital. So these are some boys. These are some good New York-based boys. David Gentile and Jeffrey.
No, come on,
Yeah.
that man. Oh, you got to be kidding me, man. Come on.
I'm just glad. I'm just glad that he's not David Jewish. It's
I would say my name
David
is
Gentile.
Shmoyl Jewish.
Shmoyl Jewish? I mean, no, he's literally not. Gentile means not Jew. And Jeffrey Schneider, which is
I know
clear.
that's like he was trying to disguise himself or
He's
something like that.
Schneider is not. I mean, you have to be very bold as a Jew to disguise yourself with Schneider. That's like
This is coming off yesterday when I literally was delivering food in South Williamsburg, and I did see a Hasidic man go like talking like this close to another guy, and he was going like, I didn't know what he was saying. But he was doing this. He's like,
yeah.
like he was making a very I don't know how to describe it, like a sort of Jewish hand gesture.
No. That's I mean, it's just like this is an off-white. Off-whites talk with their hands. Like eggshell white people talk with their hands. This is like Greeks do it, Italians do it, Jews do it. This is we're a handsy people, and the northern whites, the northern European whites don't do that. There's distance. There's hands behind your back. These are not things that the Mediterranean folk do.
They're too busy sipping Mai Tai. Please proceed.
When I think of Greeks and Italians, I think of Mai Tais. Look, Jeffrey Schneider and David Gentile, probably the two most Germanic people I've ever heard in my life, own GPB Capital, and they have this placement agent called Ascendant Capital. They lied to their investors. They were making 8.8%, okay, on this. And this is an investment firm. This is just like some asset manager, private firm. And they're delivering 8% back to people. And you know what, folks? This is 17,000 retail investors. 4,000 of them are seniors. All right.
Is that is 8% high or low? I have no context.
Pretty high. I think it's pretty high.
It seems high.
Yeah, I'm not like super expert on like what they're like promising but it's pretty good. Pretty damn good. You know, I mean it's all of it is still out. Basically, in 2018 they basically just decided they were going to stop giving out money, and because they're way off. I mean, because it's like what I think is interesting about this press release is they call it a Ponzi like scheme, but it's just a Ponzi scheme. Like
It's a very, very much a Ponzi scheme.
they're using the other investors' money just to pay out the other investors. Like that's all it is. And it's just
one of these days we're going to have to do a bio and just a whole episode on Charles Ponzi to get into the whole nitty gritty of it. But like the whole idea behind the Ponzi scheme is like that you have to always be getting. Is it that you have to be getting new investors? Like otherwise you can't proceed in paying people back.
Yes. So the
Yeah.
the portfolio of companies that they were supposed to be getting into is automotive retail, waste management, and healthcare, which are kind of maybe like three of the biggest scams in America, like in the American economy these days. Like waste management is just a little on the nose for its corruption. Like
Yeah.
if you're like, oh yeah, we're an asset management firm who invests in waste management, that's like, oh, so you're the mob. This is just like a mob front.
Yeah, I was gonna say like those. What that's so strange because they're that even that seems like a scheme up front because it's just sort of like you said, a waste management that's mafia tied, uh, b healthcare that is completely closed off unless you are part of that team, and then c what was the other one?
Automotive retail. It's just
Yeah,
like
that's a dying industry. It's like, unless you're Jeep or maybe Tesla, which is entirely speculative. Like
yeah. I mean, it's just like automotive retail is just I just think of like this is like a used car dealership, a garbage waste management facility, and healthcare, which is just like one of the most efficient, insanely over, just it's just like a Frankenstein of an industry. There's no
there's nothing. Yeah,
so much of the
yeah.
healthcare industry is just people being like insurance appraisal and people just like going through and determining where and when you can like cut off people's access to insulin and then like doing like digitization of healthcare records and doing like pharmaceutical consultants, like just thinking about the number of jobs that exist in healthcare that have absolutely nothing to do with being a doctor or a nurse is just like astounding. And then people just make so much money off of it because of like it's basically just like subsidized by the federal government as well.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, these investors, these Ponzi scheme guys, are like, "We've got an excellent return for you, Mildred. It's a 2004 alternator for a Chrysler Sebring. I don't spend it all in one place."
Another fascinating thing about this is they also apparently there was former employees were trying to speak with the SEC and they were retaliated against. So they were trying to do a whistle. They were like they also got for whistleblower violations,
hmm
which is just got to add on top of that their willingness of just how what I mean. Like if you do retaliate against a whistleblower, you know what you're doing.
So have these guys? Okay, so here's my follow up question: have these guys fucked off to Monaco, or are they in custody?
I don't know if they're in custody. The complaint was just filed, but they haven't fucked off to Monaco yet. I don't think so either.
Yeah, because like if you're doing,
this is a civil penalty, or there's not going to be criminal charges brought against them. I don't think.
okay, I was just gonna say like this is one of like when you do a Ponzi scheme on people, I mean, the ultimate end goal has to just be like, I have bought a plane ticket that starts in 6 years. Like, and now I'm going off to Bern, Switzerland or whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
you just have to get as much money as you can and then be like, peace. And then and that's it.
I think they're here. I mean, but there's also extradition. Like you have to find the right country that's not going to extradite you. And I don't know what's like the best extradition country. I'd imagine. I mean, I know like some like Russia took in Edward Snowden, I guess, and like the Ecuadorian embassy took in Julian Assange, but a lot of countries have extradition policies. They're it's like, hey, even if you're a shitty guy, we're gonna bring you back. So I really would have to think about when you and I finally get caught doing our Ponzi scheme, where we're gonna have to run to. I don't know what would be a good place to go to. Do you know anyone in Monaco that we can go hide out at, or?
No, it's Monaco's so little. It's so little. You'd have to find like an underwater cave, and like also the underwater cave would probably just have like, leagues of like treasure already filling its halls.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like one of the most cursed, states right up there with fucking Vatican City. Yeah,
It is. So I used to just be obsessed with like micro countries. I just think they're so weird, like Andorra and like Liechtenstein, and
Yeah.
like then there's another. Okay, so did you know that there's another micro country within Italy that's not the Vatican?
What?
Yeah, there's a second one.
What?
It's called San Marino. It's just like, so there are these tiny little nation states that, so in the 19th century in Germany and Italy, they had this big nationalization project where they were, because Germany was Prussia and Italy was just like the Italian states. And they had these big campaigns to like unite them as like united countries.
Yeah,
And there was a few little holdouts that just never joined. And one of them is
that's right.
Liechtenstein and one of them is San Marino.
Man, that's very Italian of them. That's very tight.
uh,
Although I'll give it to Liechtenstein because that does not sound Italian at all. So I'm okay with that. That sounds German as hell. San Marino, that's the most Italian thing you can do. See, people don't remember this like about like the Italian states aren't necessarily on good terms with each other.
no,
And
no.
then no, like the fucking like Sardinians and the Romans and the what's the one that was really hit by the Lombardis and Naples and all that
Oh,
stuff.
they
They're all
hate
just
each other.
they're all just like, hey, sabadabadabadabada," and then like, oh my god, if you're fucking
That was a good Italian accent.
if you're if you're on what's the island? What's the island? The one where people have really
Sicily.
if you're Sicilian, just forget about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you like the good rivalries. They still hate each other. I respect it. So,
You know
anyways,
who else? You know who else is Italian? Charles Ponzi. Go on.
wow, nice. You brought it back. Brought it back to us. What I like about this one is, first off, it's a huge amount of money and a lot of people, and what I also it's just one of the classic clean ones. It's just a clean Ponzi scheme, just just straight up lying about stuff and covering up
Yeah.
whistleblowers.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll get some more information on this as it evolves, most certainly.
Yeah, I mean, there's just like a few different things about them, like trying to exclude people that they know are whistleblowing from these boards, and those overseeing some auto dealerships, and then they're just, once they become aware of their submission to the, I guess, to the SEC, then they're kind of like this. They just start trying to get a replacement for them. Then they're trying to look
Tisk
through their books
tisk
and
tisk.
records. They're trying to not giving them
Uh-oh.
access to things anymore, and then they exclude them
Uh-oh.
from meetings, and just slowly, to the extent that the whistleblower revealed information to the auditors that was confidential or otherwise truthful. I think this would be an important deterrent in moving forward with a plan to terminate him, as it would be viewed as retaliatory. He was
Hey,
still
you
terminated.
guys.
He was still terminated. So there's some good stuff here, guys. I don't know how much money is really being. I mean, $1.7 billion. The SEC doesn't really look for specific amounts of money. They just kind of let it play out as it does. But they definitely put a certain amount of money on how much they took. And $1.7 billion is a lot for what they usually. I mean, there's also like 9 allegations against them. So
But that's also the funniest shit about a Ponzi scheme is that like even like though the underlying amount is like in the billions at this point, it's like you only come out with $1 million-ish because you still have to like continually give that money back via new investors' money. So it's sort of like it's just it's like if you made yourself a grand pyramid of Giza, but like so you could, put your milk in it. Like you put a like you put a refrigerator inside the pyramid, and then this is where I put my milk. And it's like, well, this seems like a lot. This seems really excessive. you know,
I
couldn't
mean,
you've just
in fairness, they're making money. Like they're getting their salary during this time. So like,
yeah, I guess.
it's not like they're just taking it all and doing it charitably. But they're doing it because it's kind of one of those things where it's the Ponzi scheme is generally not that intentional. I feel like a lot of people are doing it to fake it until they make it. Like fake it until you make it is just doing a
That's
Ponzi
so
scheme.
funny. Accidental Ponzi scheme. That's even funnier.
Because you're
Yeah.
just trying I think a lot of people walk into a Ponzi scheme wanting to actually have it be a legitimate like portfolio of like investments, and then they realize that some of them aren't doing well and they just try to keep it going anyways, and they're like, look, I'm just gonna use I'm gonna use these like initial investments to like give some dividends to prior shareholders just for now, just until I cut my
Just
losses,
for now.
until the rest of the portfolio starts making up some alpha, and then we'll make it. And there's just this kind of like it's like doing, I don't know, it's kind of like doing heroin a little bit, just like, look, I'm just doing this just for now until I can start to afford my prescriptions, or I'm just doing that, like you just kind of slowly walk into it. And I kind of feel like people don't always walk into a Ponzi scheme being like, let's fuck over some old people. Let's like,
Yeah.
and they just kind of fall into it. But 17,000 people is huge,
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah,
So
they just went whole hog after a while.
yeah, exactly. Then they were like, we're in it too deep, We're speaking of huge, big showdown in Amazon right now. Danny, you know a lot about Amazon. I want to get your
I do.
opinion about Jeff Bezos stepping down. What do you think? Why do you think he stepped down?
I don't I mean, I have theories, obviously. So, like, I knew people who actually worked at Amazon, and a lot of them basically stated that over the years, Jeff Bezos slowly but surely stopped doing stuff at Amazon. So, like, or at least stopped being as big of a part with like the daily transactions.
Yeah.
Like he would often be at Blue Origin, which is his rocket company. And would spend a lot of time over there. I believe from some of my sources, he would like it was originally that he would spend every Wednesday he would be at Blue Origin, essentially, allegedly.
Wow.
So he would just not be there, and then it just kind of got more and more from there. So my guess is definitely that it has something to do with Blue Origin, and then the other thing too is that like you know, the other people who run Amazon, they're not like Tim Cook and old why am I forgetting the original Apple CEO's
Oh,
name?
John
Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Steve Jobs was very Steve Jobs was very prolific in the way he functioned, very maniacal, like he wanted to be involved in everything, and it was literally just him dying that prevented him from continuing doing that.
Yeah.
So when they replaced him with Tim Cook, they just got a guy who was like kind of like that, but not the same guy. Amazon is a little bit more diffuse, I think, because they have a lot more fingers and a lot more pies. They
Yeah.
have Amazon Web Services, AWS,
And
which is
Amazon, like, respectfully, I love Amazon, but but like they didn't completely like invent entirely new hardware or software. Like
no.
under Steve Jobs, like he really like invented the iPhone and the iPad, which were groundbreaking technologies, and like the iPod. I mean, like all of these, and like Steve Jobs really brought the Apple brand, and with it, just like an entire new sector of the digital world. and so maybe that's why he was a little bit. I mean, I look, and full disclosure, my dad is Steve Jobs, but like besides that,
R.I.P. R.I.P.
R.I.P. Papa. But
Uh,
like, I mean, like maybe that's why he was more involved. Whereas Jeff was just running a logistics company, right?
well,
Like,
yeah, Jeff
and
Bezos's company. It really just Jeff Bezos is a very intelligent individual. I hate him. But I'm not gonna say he's not smart in some way. He's also a huge asshole. But like the uh the thing is you're right. Is Amazon really turned into a logistics management system that's really really intense now. Like their warehouses are infamous for just the level of automation they now have, in addition to the ruthlessness in which they move their employees. They've always, I mean, like I said, Amazon started out just delivering and selling books. Like that was their whole thing, was
Mhm.
just books. And since then, and they did that because you can sort books a little bit easier. They have ISBN numbers, so like
and they don't expire.
they don't have really an expiration date exactly. So it's really easy to hold them. But that was never Jeff Bezos's intention. He always thought of it as the everything store, even back in like 1998. Like there's lots of there's documentation of him being like, yeah, I want to sell everything. And since then, Amazon has essentially turned into this one of the most complicated distribution networks in the world. They have different types of distribution centers, ones that handle only large objects, ones that handle only small objects, ones that exist in Lexington. I believe Arizona has one. That one is like someone infamous. It's either Arizona or New Mexico, which is somewhat infamous because it got so hot there that a lot of people were fainting.
Whoa.
There's lots of there's all kinds of distribution centers that happen there. But like, I think, like I said, he has Jeff Bezos definitely got indoctrinated minds into his organization, and you can tell that they're in it to win it. They're in it for the long game too, just because Andy Jassy, the guy who is going to take over for him, he's worth $363 million. Like he's not a billionaire by any means, but like he has enough Amazon stock that clearly like he could spend money recklessly for the rest of his life and
Real
would
man of
never
the
run out of
people.
it.
Yeah.
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 So
Interesting.
yeah, there's a bunch of Jeff bots in Amazon.
You don't think that it
they're
was like because like I saw some people just being like speculating like did he get forced out? Does he like know something that other people don't know and he left while like the going was still good? Like is he doing this to like save face in some way, or do you think he really just is bored? Like cuz I also read
I
reports that he would like he said I try to only make 3 decisions a day and don't do anything except for during the hours of 10 a.m. and 5 p.m.
yeah. So like I said, Jeff Bezos is like he's smart, but he's also one of those dumb guy, like smart guys, whatever.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean he's universally smart. Um, I don't think he's saving face. You make a very good point because CEOs at tech companies are infamous for being booted out of their companies they started. That happened with Travis Kalanick of Uber.
Yeah.
That's happened with lots of tech CEOs essentially.
I mean, Elon Musk lost his chairmanship, right? Because of his SEC shit.
I believe so. Elon Musk is another one of those things. So I don't think Jeff Bezos did that for those reasons, although certainly getting ahead of anything is definitely advantageous in that way. Again, I don't, he's, I'm really willing to bet he's more just on that sort of Howard Hughes kick now, where like
Oh,
the man is now rounding the corner. He's getting close to $200 billion. Like,
wow.
and like keep in mind, like he was only just worth $100 billion like last year. Like that's
Wow.
insane. So yeah, I would be very surprised if it was like scandalous. Keep in mind that he sent dick pics or whatever. He was cheating on his wife and he totally got over that. Remember?
I
People don't
think
even talk about
so.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he didn't even get ousted as CEO for that. Uh
Yeah.
So I think he kind of just left on his own accord. And keep in mind, I believe he's still executive chairman, so he'll still fucking like be there for sure. Let's see, Jeff Bezos net worth. Um, and he is now $184 billion. Yep.
Mazel
And
tov.
yeah, it's so funny because that one last week or 2 weeks ago, we were like, Elon Musk is the richest person in the world. Not anymore.
It's back to
He's
Jeff.
now at it's back to Jeff. 177 is Elon Musk. So
Well, we at Ponzi Scream really have our we really have we have skin in the game, for this competition. This is like I'm putting all my money on Jeff or something. I don't know, whatever. So look, we got but Amazon's going through an interesting time right now. They last year, right when the pandemic broke out, they had they had one worker who ended up being fired because he was trying to unionize in their Staten Island distribution center. And now,
yes, that was a very big deal.
yeah. And so now they amazingly there is in Alabama, there is in Bessemer, Alabama, there's a distribution center that is going to
It's
have
a
a
new
union
one.
votes. It's a relatively new distribution center.
I'm fairly certain that that is the reason. That's like the whole reason. Let's see, Bessemer, Alabama. Where
They
is that? Oh, this is about 30 minutes outside of Birmingham. Okay. It's
Okay.
not far. Yeah.
So the retail, wholesale, and department store union is uh they're trying to they're having a unionization election, and it's all going to be by mail, which Amazon was fighting very severely, which is I think very. I mean, look, none of
Rocks. It rocks that it's
it
by mail.
rocks. It totally rocks that it's by mail because Amazon was saying like at first like they fired that guy in Staten Island because he was apparently exposing people to coronavirus by talking to them about the union. But Amazon wanted to have their union election in person, and it's like, well, I mean, look, it's stupid to point out hypocrisies because that's not what it's actually about. But it's worth noting that they're being hypocrites because it's not actually about that stuff. And I don't know. I think that there's a lot of people who can still kind of be influenced one way or the other about some of these union activities, and people really rely on Amazon these days. And so for a lot of customers, there's a lot of confusion about, is this going to actually make my packages more expensive? Is this going to slow things down? Is this going to, I don't know, ruin, my ability to get my prescription medication or something like that, because a lot of people just, especially in coronavirus, are so reliant on these tech companies and these logistics companies like Uber and stuff like that to survive, that people don't really, it's hard to cut through the kind of the corporate, consumer welfare line and get to the crux of the issue, which is over the course of, like you said, over the course of the pandemic, Amazon has just netted just. I mean, they're now worth around $2 trillion at this
It's
point.
they're huge. They've made so much money
Yeah,
over the course of this. And they are, that whole argument, oh, is it going to cost you more? It's like, well, first off, um there I don't think there is really I don't think you can make the argument that there is a specific way that could universally cost anyone more or less if this Bessemer plant becomes unionized. If you want to go the route, will unionization eventually to other unionization, which make things cost more, then yeah, maybe, sure, it probably would, but who gives a fuck? But
I'm not
like,
sure that that's true though, because it's like,
I know I'm giving them like the benefit
yeah,
of the doubt, in
okay,
this case. But like that's the thing about Amazon's distribution though, is that it's weird and decentralized. So like for example, Kentucky and Lexington in that area, that's a big, or maybe it's Louisville. One of those cities in Kentucky is a huge hub for either UPS or FedEx, one of those two. So like when shit comes from the West Coast and goes to the East Coast, it probably goes through Kentucky,
Oh, interesting.
because of that. But Amazon is is a little bit more decentralized. So if something comes to Florida, for example, from the West Coast, um, I think the argument that they would be is like, well, if you take away if you unionize the Bessemer plant, then it's going to make things harder or it's going to cost more or whatever. Well, it doesn't I don't think it affects any of the infrastructural things because the plant's already made. It's already like an invested solid
And also, I
thing.
mean, look, a union is free. Like there is it.
Yeah.
It costs nothing to unionize. Where you're going to get into costs is about the contract that's negotiated for the workers, and it's a collective bargaining agreement, and the word bargaining matters. Like no one is going to bargain for something that is going to bankrupt the company or like unreasonably ruin its business model. This is a like what this does is this allows the workers to negotiate their conditions of work and like their benefits. It's not like we are going to take over Amazon and like make it so that we are all making Jeff Bezos amounts of money. This is we don't want you to hire seasonal laborers who just got out of prison, and are like doing this like there's just like been some stuff about how like they're basically hiring scabs at this point to campaign against the union, which is pretty crazy. Um and doing things like that, they're just for the purposes of like undercutting everyone else, and they're preying on their vulnerability of these people who are part-time seasonal workers and doing that for the purpose of, I don't know, just trying to ruin everyone else's like job experience. And there's just like all the stuff of like tracking the way that the Amazon worker like will like move their hands. I've read articles about that in the past, and there's just the bathroom breaks are excessive, like are really really short in these Amazon plants, and you get incentivized just to kind of like keep going, and it gets very like gamified workspace. And look, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and it's all good stuff, but Amazon can absolutely afford to pay people a living wage and still keep prices down. I mean, there is no reason that you have to have like it's like the way that money is distributed and like reimbursed back to the company and like the corporate side versus like some of it staying with the workers. Like you don't like that's where things really get lost is like how much are you paying people in HQ versus how much are you paying the workers? And a good collective bargaining agreement would balance that out without cutting into the core expenses of the business. You know what I mean? Where you're
Yeah.
balancing
Yeah.
out how much corporate is making versus the workers, not cutting into and raising overall expenses. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
But they don't
I
do
think
that
you're
because they're greedy. Like like
yeah.
people don't see that as like a like tenable position because you're saying you're not going to reduce my paycheck. It's like actually we want to reduce your paycheck because like
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, well, I think you're getting at a core thing here is that like it's not going to cost more. It's like, would there be potential infrastructure things where it's just sort of like, well, okay, like it just like, first of all, I don't believe this because I think things are so expedited there anyway that I don't believe it. But second of all, if there was any change, it would just be that things might be a little bit slower. Like that's the only thing. And it would be a little bit slower to humanity's great advantage
Yes.
because there has been, as you mentioned, huge uh sort of like draconian measures that have been taken against workers who work at Amazon. Like one of the things that's really big that I believe happened to a Chicago plant was the situation where they just closed. They straight up closed an entire distribution center or something to that effect. Its hours changed, and what they offered people is they didn't offer people the same shifts that they had at a different plant or whatever. What they said is you can either be fired or you can do like basically these ultra shifts or these zombie
Oh
shifts.
yeah,
And
they're
what
starting
they
to do those. Yeah.
where and like this is like cruel and unusual punishment essentially. And the shift is a graveyard shift, but it's 10 hours. So it's 1 a.m. to 11 a.m. Just absolute fucking nut. Just that's crazy, and like the reason those graveyard shifts that are so insane and like why they're pushing them is because Amazon, part of the reason Amazon, they lease out, a lot of the transportation space. Um, that well, actually, no, that doesn't make any sense either. Because I was going to say they lease out like the flight space that like UPS and FedEx use during the day, but they also use it at night. So I take that back. It's basically it's just this thing
I
where
mean,
they're
it's
like,
one of
well,
these like effectively like it is always cost cutting to like most cost savings that corporate America tries to do is to cut into workers' pay, benefits, or working conditions. It is never,
yeah,
or to automate, just to straight up automate. It is never cost savings by like reducing pay. Amazon is a company that doesn't give out dividends much or at all, as far as I understand. But you know, giving stopping dividends to shareholders. You know what I mean? Like these are things that like they never do. Most companies do not do cost savings on the white collar side. It is always on the blue collar side. And so when people
yeah,
um and it, I mean like you look at examples of like where people have better wages, a lot of that is like you have $22. I don't know, I saw this one tweet that was like, Danish workers make $22 an hour, but their Big Mac is like 30 cents more expensive in
or $1. Who cares? It's not a
yeah.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it's just like a huge, huge benefit for the cost of nothing. I mean, I will say this. This is one thing that I think is doesn't get talked about enough, which is just that how expensive private health insurance is for employers. Like one of the
yeah,
things that I think is it there's a real missed opportunity. I mean, I don't know if people would buy it because I think it's like ultimately probably not that good faith of an effort on the other side. But like if like how much small businesses and really corporate America has to pay and how inefficient and just like bad for business and like lagging productivity is for healthcare. Like paying for healthcare for your workers is just is like it's such a huge expense. And it isn't good for the company's bottom line. And if you could want to like bankrupt a small business, talk about doing like healthcare issues, like all these like, and none of that is just, all that's doing for the workers is just giving them like a shitty healthcare plan. So that way, if they like break their
yeah.
arm, they're not gonna like go into insane amounts of debt. Like this is most healthcare plans aren't even that great, but you have to negotiate them and you have to buy them, and it's just so expensive and time consuming that I really am shocked that there aren't more like business owners who are like, this sucks. This system totally sucks. Um,
Yeah, well, a lot of those owners are just fucking losers to begin with, so they're not thinking about it like, I mean, I'm not gonna say all, small business owners are the petty tyrants, but a lot of them are. And it's like they're just sort of like, I don't wanna get it.
well, just they
We're
don't
talking
see
about
the forest
this.
through the trees. They think that it's like a class antagonism, and so they have this like class solidarity with like the health insurance industry. And when they don't realize like how much they're getting fucked over by health insurance as much as everyone else is. Like if you like imagine if healthcare, if we had Medicare for all, how much of those expenses could be used towards whatever employers wanted to. I mean, they could and that would be on the table for bargaining with a union, of course. Some people could see a raise. Probably the majority of companies would probably use that to like line their own pockets because that's just kind of how people's incentives are in the white collar sector and
Yeah.
in most human behavior. But that would be something to bargain over with a union, and that could go event that could make its way back to workers. Um, and just the fact that it has to be constantly negotiated all the time is a huge waste of everyone's goddamn time.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, the pandemic of all things has thrown that into complete disarray, considering, uh, people can't, if it doesn't matter if you have health-based insurance, if you don't work or have a job anymore,
Right.
that's
So
that's a real big deal.
So Amazon tried to make the union election in person because actually, uh, turns out that it's the opposite effect with normal elections. But in a union election, voting in person has a higher turnout rate than voting by mail,
Huh.
uh, because you go to your job every day, right? And so you vote there. Whereas if you work, like it's kind of like maybe a union ballot is kind of perceived that comes to you in the mail is probably going to be perceived like when you get your letter for your company health insurance from like Vanguard and you just kind of ignore it and throw it away. Right, like that's not or not their health insurance, but you're like your 401, yeah, your 401k information. So like people just might ignore it more likely a union ballot than they would just seeing it in person. So that was Amazon's argument, but they also like I was reading in I think it was in Huffington Post and also the American Prospect had a couple articles about why Amazon wanted to have in-person elections. And it wasn't just to give their employees coronavirus, it's because that is the
Hmm.
last best time when the employers can intimidate workers is when they because during the election process there's a union rep and your manager or someone appointed by on the management side to watch and surveil and make sure everything's kosher at the ballot box and most managers allegedly know how a lot of people are going to vote and they will assign a particular manager to oversee a particular time when a particular worker is going to work to maximize
Oh.
the intimidation effect.
So what they get they get the manager who just sort of like looks like a Looney Tunes character who's just like
Yeah, the
like
scariest guy. Yeah, the to
yeah, yeah,
for the
yeah,
scare,
yeah.
for that or the person who's directly
Ah.
supervising that one person who happens to be voting in that time period.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's used to maximum effect because like there is a silent period in which case manage like in the 24 hours before an election which management can't speak, but this is kind of the one time where they can kind of just like look over them and they can be like, what are you, how are
He's
you,
like,
what are you?
"Hi.
Yeah, yeah, I mean it's like, and so yeah,
Hello."
so Amazon's been doing some pretty normal stuff like some of the anti-union stuff they did some captive audience meetings which is where management and a consultant require employees to sit on a meeting. This is like pretty cut and dry stuff. I've sat through them before. It's something you have to go through, and a good union organizer will like prepare you for that. And I mean, there's like, I mean, the union efforts that I've been involved in have been no less than 50 people. This is 5,800 people at this Bessemer plant.
Woo!
So huge, totally different scale of unionizing that's going on here. And so one of the things that they're doing is the union organizers have been doing direct canvassing at the stop sign right outside of the plant.
Yes.
And uh, this kind of was a little bit of like a viral video, and you kind of see people doing this, and it's not a very common tactic because you don't really want like who wants to be like canvassed like their Greenpeace or Planned Parenthood on in Washington Square Park. Like no one wants to get these flyers.
But that's the goofy thing though, David. Totally different culture. Like we're fucking brazen, fucking 27 rings, best city in the world, New Yorkers
Yeah,
up here being like, don't fucking talk to me. But I'm gonna go ahead and go out on a limb that if you know a guy who also works at a plant and you live in Alabama, maybe you're like, oh hey, how's it going?
true.
People are more friendly.
True. And so what apparently what a big tactic that's like gotten increased their support is the union organizers because a company does not is not legally required to let a non-employee onto their premises. They do not have the from what I understand they do not have the legal requirement to allow a union organizer on. You can have obviously if you work for the company and you're on the organizing committee, you're allowed on the premises and once you're there, you are legally protected to state your opinions on the union and stuff like that. But you can't have like you know, an organizer themselves. So what the organizers are doing, they're just right outside the property, right at this stoplight at this plant, and they're like handing out flyers and talking to people in their cars about the union and stuff. And this is all alleged that recently the lights have been adjusted at this stoplight to have people leave sooner, have the light turn green sooner, because that way people don't have as much time to talk to these union reps. And the Amazon workers, the organizers, are alleging that Amazon spoke with the city to have the lights changed faster so that the union reps wouldn't have time to talk to them. Okay?
Hilarious.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there was apparently already a car accident which someone got seriously injured on because as a result of these lights being changed. I mean, just like scary stuff, pretty crazy shit. In the meantime, there was that big headline where like there was a bill that's being proposed in like Nevada that would allow for the creation of company towns, and it's like this is what you would get if you had a company town. If you had a town that was literally owned and operated by Amazon, like we did in the early 19th century, your entire like all of the stoplights would operate like this.
Yeah, shit gets real. Yeah, shit gets real 19th century on you, and it gets really weird. Where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and I mean, and again, for what? For what? So I mean, like, think about really. I mean, let's take this to its like absolute extreme, and say that like every single company or like plant, every single distribution center becomes unionized, and they have to start paying people more, and they don't have to work these devilishly long shifts. It's like, so who cares? It's like they really are just trying. They're like, no, I have to have it all. And I don't know. I mean, not to get too basic on you, not to be like a 19th, excuse me, not to be a 19-year-old, uh,
Do it. Be a 19-year-old.
socialist. Not to be a 19-year-old long-legged socialist. But like I was listening to another podcast where they were literally talking about political economy and how that pertains to Marxism, and they just did the basic MCM, or uh MCM, CMC, where it's like money, capital, money, and then capital, money, capital, or whatever, or it's something like that. But it basically is it's like that Marxist equation that basically says, if you are creating something so you can exchange it and build something else, that's different. That's just using money. That's just turning a thing that you have into money or whatever. But if
Yeah.
you make something so it is purely so you can make more money, that's when it turns into capital. And that's when you have people who are making money purely just for the sake of getting more money.
Right.
It's like they don't, and it really just takes you down this goofy philosophical turn where it's like, for what? Like, this is enriching the lives of like a half dozen people who, quite frankly, don't even spend their money. They don't have
Right.
fun. And there's no point to just all like so much human misery, just so much human misery, so many like 50-year-old like mothers who have to continue working an 11 to 2, or excuse me, an 11 a 1 a.m. to 11 a.m. shift 4 times a week, and then like can't take care of their kids on the weekends because their circadian rhythm is completely fucked up,
Right.
and just it's like, it's so completely unsympathetic. And the other false promise too, especially if you live in New York, is that like Amazon doesn't deliver things on time already.
Right.
Like
Right.
they're already passing the buck onto other things and saying that they're helping customers. But if you're a New York resident, you already know that it's like Amazon doesn't deliver their shit. third-party contractors deliver their shit, and quite frankly, they do it terribly. They
So
throw your shit in the trash. They don't put it in the right spot. So it's like Amazon is already failing, you know?
yeah, I mean, I think that that's a very common thing of like using the shortcomings of capitalism and blaming it on socialism somehow. And it's just like one of these things that like constantly happens where it's never capitalism's fault in some way. It's like when socialism is like crippled and kneecapped and destroyed by like a coup or something like that, it's like, oh, well, see, socialism doesn't work. But then when capitalism has like overt glaring faults that are have literally nothing to do with socialism, it's still socialism's fault. Anyways, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission announced last week, excuse me, that it is requiring Amazon to pay $61.7 million to settle charges that it withheld customer tips from Amazon Flex drivers over
Big deal.
over a 2.5 year period.
Big deal.
This is its subsidiary Amazon Logistics. The company had advertised that it paid 100% of tips to drivers, but in reality, Amazon used the customer tips to cover the difference after it lowered the hourly rate. A change it didn't inform drivers about.
Yeah. Yeah. This literally came into my life the other day where I was delivering and a lady gave me a cash tip and she said, "Oh, I thought I should give you a cash tip just because Amazon was stealing." And I was like, "Good on you."
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I've seen a couple charts of just like how wage theft is such a prevalent force, and it doesn't really get discussed in the same way with the same level of severity as something like actual theft or a robbery or even like embezzlement or even a Ponzi scheme,
Mhm.
but it is everywhere. And there are open efforts to continue to suppress people's ability just to be able to have a voice at the table. I mean, the at Google with this union, which is kind of like its own. It has it's a different kind of union than what's trying to be sought for at Amazon right now. That they're firing people left and right. For these
Mhm.
retaliation sort of stuff. I mean, this is just going on constantly. So this is kind of what the American labor laws are supposed to do. It's supposed to facilitate contracting, coming to a contract. The American labor law is not a pro worker law. It is a pro conciliation law that is
Yeah.
is created to incentivize, encourage people to peacefully form unions and to get to the collective bargaining process. Because if you don't do that, then there is just decades of like there's just chaos. Companies spend insane amounts of money trying to suppress a union. They spend all this time and resources and energy hiring lawyers and consultants, and then they say they can't afford a union. um, the purpose of forming a kind of like Wagner Act union is to just get to some peace,
Yeah.
industrial labor peace. And um anyways, that's what's kind of being sought for right now. And it's a crazy time. This would be one of the first big union shops in the South, one of the first big union shops in the tech sector. I mean, Google had its white collar workers unionized through this you know non-traditional union uh, approach, and that was able to include independent contractors. This one is not going to include seasonal workers, which is there's apparently like 700 of them, and they're not in the
Yeah.
bargaining unit. And Amazon is using them, like I said earlier, to to be opposition. Like they're being required to wear these "vote no" on the union on their on pins on their little like work uniforms. And
God, it's just so transparent. It's like they just don't. They're so bad at it. Like it's such a bad look. It's just such a bad look
yeah.
every single time. It's just like, what do you? Come on, dude. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Is there, dude? Before we go, is there like any kind of requirement like during these meetings where they have all the lawyers come in and be like, this is why a union is bad? There just needs to be like one person in there who's just sort of like, they're lying. It's
you're I mean
not true.
you're allowed to speak up during these meetings for sure. But that'd be funny. I mean, they're not allowed to say some things, which is interesting. They're not allowed to threaten people. They're not allowed to like say this will lead to the collapse of the company. They're not allowed to say like we will retaliate against you if you do this. So there's a lot of things that they can't say. But
there needs to be like
they still say it oftentimes.
every single one of these fake meetings, the first question that before they even start talking is someone needs to be like, "Hi there, were you paid by the company to be here?" You know, like that needs to be. They just need to be like, yes or no. You know, like real fast, just to invalidate all of that.
Well, we'll know more. Well, actually, we won't know more by the time this episode comes out because voting starts on Monday, but it's going to be a long process because these mail-in ballots are going to take forever. So we'll be following this, and in the meantime, I think that there's some people who are sending pizza to the workers. There's some rallies going on. I mean, it's hard with something like this. It's hard to know how you can support, except for just kind of, I don't know, be like, cool guys, good luck, wish you the best.
Nice.
I don't know, like like you can't really like donate to, there's not like a, I don't know, there's not a GoFundMe for this, or there's not like an Act Blue link that you can give to some super PAC that's sponsored by the Democratic Party to support this. This is just kind of like this is one of these kinds of elections that can really only be won or lost based off like people on the ground talking to people.
Yeah. Ooh, man, David, so surprising that the Biden administration or like all these things, they just all those people on Twitter, they just who are so concerned about people, and especially how concerned they are with Black lives too. They're just a little conspicuously silent, even though the Alabama plant is like like a large portion is just African American.
Oh, overwhelmingly so. Overwhelmingly.
That's so strange. That's so strange. They must have not. Man, somebody must have not have told them, because that'd be really weird if they just didn't say anything about that. That'd be so strange. It's so strange.
It is weird how the kind of people, I don't know, what people pay attention to on the left.
So funny. So funny.
We'll see how this goes, and that's kind of all we can say about it.
All right.
For Ponzi Scream, I'm Danny Feltz.
Ooh, I'm a big butt. My name is David.
All right. Good luck. Good night.
Sounds good.